Chaque jour, des débats, des analyses, des commentaires. Retrouvez l'essentiel du Salon de la radio sur salondelaradio.com et sur la lettre.pro. La radio du Salon de la radio.
And we are going to switch in English for this keynote from Paul Rodgers. He is the head of the network of this DAB-only station in the UK. And we are going to start, Paul, with welcome to France first.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm not so sure how much is left to say after a 3-day festival, but I'll do my best.
Yeah, that's all right. We still can't hear Paul very well. I don't know if it's okay for everybody, but okay, right. Paul, welcome to Paris.
Thank you very much.
So tell us about what is BBC Radio 6 Music.
Oh, so 6 Music, I think, is the best music radio station operating in the whole world. It's broadcasts digitally only in the UK. And what we do is we set out to celebrate music of an alternative spirit. So what we don't do are play mainstream hits, have high rotation kind of commercial music on the radio station. So really it's not our concern whether music is fashionable or commercial or mainstream. What we seek is that alternative spirited thread. It's 6 Music began in 2002. It was one of a suite of 5 digital-only radio stations that the BBC launched back then, and the idea was to help migrate audiences towards listening on digital and on DAB. Each of the radio stations had a specific editorial purpose, and each one kind of tried to find a niche of its own, so it was very definitely an attempt to diversify the UK broadcast offer. So we had 1 Extra which played urban music, we had 4 Extra which used the BBC's archive and was a speech and comedy station. We had 5 Live, Sport Extra, the Asian Network, and 6 Music. And 6 Music's job was to kind of look after the serious music lover. So it's a big deal. It was the first national radio station launched by the BBC in 32 years. Since then the station has developed. It's had some ups and downs, as often a first child will do. So 6 Music is famously the radio station that the BBC suggested closed, and the BBC Trust found that the station should stay open. But since then, the 6 Music has really found a passionate audience, and it's currently the most listened to and biggest digital-only radio station in the UK.
En 2 mots, la station a été créée en 2002. C'était la première station à être créée par la BBC depuis 32 ans. Et elle propose un format alternatif musical et elle est diffusée uniquement sur le digital. Et c'est aujourd'hui la première station en termes d'audience, la première station uniquement digitale en termes d'audience. So you receive the station through the DAB.
Yeah, you get in the UK you can get the station online, you can get it on digital TV, and you can get it on DAB. DAB for us is our most important platform because 70% of the 6 Music audience, over 70%, get 6 Music via DAB. I think in France you can get it on the website and via the Astra satellite.
I see. So who is listening to BBC Radio 6 Music? What is your audience?
So we try and appeal to curious music lovers. So we appeal to people who take their music seriously and are quite discerning. They cover all age demographics, really. 6 Music has a broad appeal across the audience ranges. Of about half of our audience, just over half of our audience is under 44, and just under half of it is over 44, because curiosity about music isn't something that is just for older listeners or just for younger listeners. So we have a curious, widespread audience of music lovers.
So, l'audience de BBC Radio 6 Music est très diversifiée. Il y a autant d'auditeurs de plus de 40 ans que de moins de 40 ans. Et c'est dédié à des personnes qui sont curieux, qui sont des personnes curieuses sur la musique, qui prennent le sujet de la musique sérieusement. So, is it really different from other stations, or is just formatted differently, really?
It is. The music offer is distinctly different from what you can find elsewhere, and it is also formatted differently. So, as I say, there's plenty of mainstream music about. There are plenty of places that you can find high rotation hits, so that's not our job. They're all great, but it's just not what we do. We are here to explore and celebrate music of the alternative spirits from the 60s. About a third of our music is new music, and about 2/3 are BBC sessions and archives and older tracks. So we're not a new music station, and we're not an old music station. What that allows us to do is tell the stories between new music and old music and kind of join the dots, see where new music is coming from, tell the stories that there are in music. So it's a really rich offering. We did a survey just a couple of years ago of a set of radio stations in the UK, but quite a broad set of music stations. And in this survey, 91% of the new music and 95% of the older music on Six Music wasn't repeated on any other radio stations. So that's a really, really distinctive offer. About half of what we play is by UK artists. And so I would say that there's probably more unique UK artists on Six Music than there are on other radio stations. For instance, if you play a lot of Adele, that's quite a lot of your time spent playing Adele. So that's a lot of time spent with the UK artists, but we play many, many more and varied range of UK artists than that.
Donc un tiers de la musique qui est diffusée par BBC Radio 6 Music, c'est de la musique récente. Il y a un peu de toutes les ranges, mais une particularité, une étude a été faite, et 95% de la musique qui est jouée sur BBC Radio 6 Music n'est jouée par aucune autre station. La moitié des artistes sont des artistes anglais. Is it true that this is your presenters that are choosing the music that is played on BBC Radio 6 Music?
When I was brought up listening to the radio, I always assumed that the presenters were always choosing the records that they play. So we have a very simple approach to that, which is to, by and large, let them do that. So we are, and we have been for some time, a very curated music offering. So what the presenters play automatically changes a little bit of what Six Music is, because at the moment that they are playing, the song that they are playing, they are Six Music. So, yeah, we do trust them. And so the job really is to get together the kind of list of presenters that we've got. And I think we have a tremendous roster of presenters. I can name a few if you want. So we have broadly two types of presenter. We have sort of experienced radio practitioners like Lauren Laverne and Steve Lamacq and Gideon Coe, Mark Radcliffe. These people... Giles Peterson, I think people might have heard of. These people really have been in radio for a long time, and they've made a great contribution over the years to radio, and they are experts in music. And then we have another set of presenters who are likely to be musicians, who we were talking about VIP before, which so we've been doing that since about 2008. We've been employing musicians to share their insight on music. So if you look at Six Music Sunday schedule, it's all musicians from 10 o'clock in the morning until the evening. So we begin with Cerys Matthews, which is our single biggest programme. And then there's Guy Garvey, who is the singer in Elbow. He presents a show for us. Then we have a show from Jarvis Cocker. And then we have Tom Robinson. And so it goes on. Not just on Sunday, in the rest of the week we have plenty of representation from musicians. So we have a great show from Huey Morgan on Saturday, and on Friday evenings we have a show from Iggy Pop, which is just amazing for me to think that we have that. And then we have a kind of layer of musicians who they're not with us regularly, but they kind of touch down in the station for a few shows every now and then. So just at the minute we've got shows from Henry Rollins running. We have a show from Carl Hyde from Underworld last weekend. And I've just heard that we've just signed up Michael Kiwanuka to do a series of programs throughout February, and also Goldfrapp, Carolyn Goldfrapp, will do something in March. So, yeah, when you can kind of assemble that kind of talent, it would be strange not to listen to what they had to say.
Donc BBC Radio 6 Music, effectivement, capitalise sur les animateurs et leur culture musicale. Il y a deux types d'animateurs. Il y a des animateurs qui sont des animateurs expérimentés, mais il y a aussi une deuxième catégorie qui sont des vrais musiciens. Par exemple, le dimanche, les programmes sont entièrement faits par des personnes qui viennent du monde de la musique. Et il y a aussi de nombreuses stars qui peuplent la grille des programmes, comme par exemple le show de Iggy Pop tous les vendredis soirs. So it's kind of the dream of anybody to think that they could be a presenter on BBC Radio 6 Music if they have this freedom. So what would be for you, what would be the ideal presenter that you would be most likely signed for?
So what would be a musician that I would like to sign? Well, I regret that we won't be having a show from David Bowie, which we tried many, many times, but he always very politely turned us down. At least that's if he got the message. I think our audience, they like to hear people with strong opinions on music, and I think therefore that they would really appreciate shows from people like PJ Harvey and Nick Cave. I think I would like to see shows on Six Music from. For me personally, I've just got a suspicion that somebody like Tom Waits might be able to tell a story a little bit. So I get the impression that someone like Tom Waits would be a great presenter to have for 6 Music. So if I had to choose, I would choose Tom Waits.
I'll do my best to convince them.
Thank you.
Oui, donc évidemment, ce seront des personnes qui ont les personnes que Paul voudrait idéalement recruter. À l'époque, David Bowie, il a essayé de nombreuses fois, mais aussi des personnes comme PJ Harvey, Nick Cave and Tom Waits. What do you think are the challenges of BBC Radio 6 Music in the next couple of years? Quels sont les challenges qui attendent BBC Radio 6 Music pour les deux prochaines années?
We have challenges in common with the rest of the radio industry, and we have challenges which I think are specific to broadcasting on digital. I think for us, always it has been a challenge as a smallish digital radio station that is growing to speak beyond the small audience that we've grown. So creating new awareness, I think, for us is a really, really important thing to do. We have a festival that helps us do that. That brings us to... that gives us the opportunity to go to different towns in the UK every year and make a brand statement about what kind of radio station Six Music is. We film that festival so that can appear on digital TV, and the BBC resources it very well, thank you. So that's a way that we can create awareness. We often use the social media channels to create awareness, and we always think about not just talking to ourselves in everything that we do. So new awareness, always I think an important challenge, but then the other key challenge is, you know, I talked about our audience being roughly half under 44 and roughly half over 44 and spread out across the age demographics. While that is true, I've seen our average audience age grow a little bit over the last few years, and I think it's in common with the other media. I think it's really important to maintain one's relevance to young listeners. Otherwise, Six Music, like anyone else, doesn't have a future.
Donc les deux challenges principaux, c'est vraiment que les gens soient au courant que BBC Radio 6 existe. On voit notamment de manière générale dans l'industrie radiophonique la durée d'écoute baisser. Et l'autre challenge, c'est aussi de maintenir une grande diversité dans l'âge des auditeurs, car comme sur l'ensemble du marché, cette audience a tendance à vieillir. Et l'une des initiatives, c'est notamment BBC Radio 6 Music a lancé un festival, et on va regarder un petit extrait du festival, ce qui va aussi vous donner une idée de la couleur musicale de cette radio. We are going to see an extract of this festival that BBC Radio 6 Music is having every year. This is also going to give you an idea of the color of music that is played on BBC Radio 6 Music. Let's go. We have no sound, I think. Can you please put the sound? On a le volume? Oui? Oui, non? Merci.
Get ready, because BBC Radio 6 Music Festival is heading to Bristol. We've got a mind-blowing mix of bands playing. Misty and Roots, Julian Cope, Primal Scream, Roisin Murphy, Suede, Daughter, Tricky Foles, Underworld Savages, John Grant, Laura Marley, Roots Maneuver, Ezra Furman, Guy Garvey and Julia Holter.
It's too much for some, but don't worry, there's live coverage next weekend.
So I would say that list of music gives a fairly good rendition of the kind of music that you can hear on Six Music. So before I came here, I got our list. We have a featured album every day, an album of the day. Many radio stations do this. And I think it's a really good list for showing the range of music that Six Music plays. So yesterday our album of the day was Trainspotting, the original soundtrack. Today it's Ty Segall, that's a new album. We have a classic album from MIA on tomorrow. Then on Thursday we have the new album from Max Richter, which is a kind of sort of modern classical. I think you'd call Max Richter a modern classical performer. Then on Friday we have the new Elbow album. Next week we have albums from Sampha, Toothless, Duke Garwood, Julian Cope, and then a classic album from Blur on Friday. So you can see there's a tremendous range of music that Six Music plays there. And our audience, they just love that eclectic approach. We rarely get complaints about music that people haven't heard of. We might get complaints about playing the same songs too often. So it really has proved to be a great model, I think, for a great boost in confidence for people who want to give an eclectic offer to their audience. I think that's what Six Music has really given things.
Mais comme on a pu le voir sur la vidéo, la longue liste d'artistes montre la diversité des artistes et chaque jour il y a des programmes différents avec des styles différents et c'est précisément, contrairement à d'autres radios, c'est précisément ce qui fait que les auditeurs de BBC Radio 6 Music viennent écouter BBC Radio 6 Music. And we were talking about the listening hours, so la durée d'écoute. And so we said that in general, we see that this is decreasing, but actually BBC Radio 6 Music has quite a strong number of listening hours compared to other radios.
I'm sure you'll have heard this in the festival before, but the reach, by and large, I think, certainly in the UK, is remaining quite strong in all audiences. But the amount of consumption, on average, that a listener does is eroding, and that's an issue in the UK as it is elsewhere. And I think Alan Davey from Radio 3 maybe touched upon that on Sunday. So that's a trend that Six Music happily is booking at the moment. So our reach is growing, and yet our listening hours are remaining very robust and strong. So an average audience member will listen to Six Music for 9 hours, 20 minutes a week. That's really good by any standard. So Six Music's the biggest digital radio station, but it's also the most listened to radio station. And I kind of think that that's because people understand what they get when they come here. So it's a fairly it's a coherent brand, Six Music. It has a real sense of its own identity, and it's got a tone that that's consistent. And I think that kind of thing really helps, obviously, create a sense of trust with the audience. Plus, if you look at I talked about Sunday, if you look at a day like Sunday, I get a lot of feedback from audience members who put the Radio 6 Music on in the morning. And because there's this rich, very varied, non-repetitive set of songs from sincere musicians who sincerely are telling you stories about music, it's quite a special time. And I think formats like that can really do wonders for our listening hours as well. Plus, we do the regular things. You know, we're tight in the daytime. We kind of hit our junctions properly. We try and be professional about it. But I think that basically, I would say that we keep our promise to our audience, and that's why they stay with us.
Donc, contrairement au marché sur lequel l'audience cumulée reste stable sur l'ensemble du marché, mais en général la PDA, la part de durée, la part d'audience est plutôt en baisse sur l'ensemble du marché en Angleterre, comme ça l'est dans le reste, dans d'autres pays. Mais contrairement à cette tendance globale, la durée d'écoute reste relativement stable. La radio fait à 9h 20 minutes d'écoute par semaine, ce qui est fort, et c'est justement lié au fait que les auditeurs ne savent pas à quoi ils vont s'attendre quand ils vont écouter la radio, et du coup ça répond à cette curiosité. Do you think that, maybe to finish, and maybe we'll take one or two questions, do you think that is there any concern from you regarding the trend about people abandoning to do linear listening, so to listen to broadcasting radios, basically? Is it on demand the feature only? Is it a concern for your station?
I think clearly as people migrate to different platforms and devices, then those platforms and devices will have different strengths to to other technology. So I do understand that radio needs to continue and to adapt, otherwise, because it is a preeminent linear broadcaster, but we can see how TV and print media has fared with a more internet-based and streamed media offer. So radio shouldn't be complacent. And I think as well, if we're going to appeal to audiences where we can see that consumption patterns are changing, and not just very young audiences, I think, but also audiences in their 20s, 30s and 40s. We're seeing a lot of evidence that these audiences are using new devices and platforms. I think radio's job is to reinvent itself for those platforms. And it might not look exactly like radio looks now. So we should look at the functionality of these platforms. We should look at the appeal and the unique possibilities that these platforms make for us. And we should reinvent radio so that maybe it's more socially driven in some times, that it's more playlist based at other times, that on-demand listening is given extra emphasis. So I would say that radio is at a time where it needs to focus on reinvention. That's definitely the case. But I think also that reinvention should go hand in hand with the unique qualities that make radio what it is. And I just think we need to be really careful about protecting the existing broadcast advantages that we've got in radio. Radio does do some unique things that other media can't do, and we should reframe those things, but not throw them away as we seek to change, as we seek to reinvent in other areas. So for me, at the heart of what radio does, it's pretty simple. It's a live connection from a voice to one and to many at the same time, and not all streamed media can do that. Not all media can do that, of course. So I could tell you about some ways that I think Six Music could do that if you want. Do you want me to do that?
Do you have a video? Or
No, I can just talk about it.
Tell me.
Okay, so at Six Music we're trying to develop formats to enhance and exploit this kind of sense of community, this broadcast to the one and to the many at the same time. So we can be flexible because we're human, and radio is very simple, and we can be flexible to what's going on in the real world. So if something happens like the death of David Bowie or the death of Prince, we can be there in a very real way, and our presenters will share not just a playlist, but they'll share their emotions about that with you. And if you've got a sense of trusted space, then those emotions will be very similar to the audience's emotions, and that's something that I think you can't get outside linear broadcasting. But we also are trying to develop formats that go beyond current events. So recently, when Radiohead released their last album, we used social media to invite our listeners and Radiohead fans around the world to bring their favorite Radiohead selections to the radio station, but at a specific time. And they shared for an hour their favorite Radiohead stories, and social media was, it was really hot with it. And then we played out the new Radiohead album, and it was the first chance that any of those listeners or anybody in the world got to hear that new Radiohead album. And there is something really affecting and powerful, I think, about sharing a moment, a new experience, at the same time as other people are sharing that experience. So that is something I think that is uniquely available through the radio. And what we're doing here is we're making a format where we merge social media and radio to the benefit of radio.
Donc évidemment, la radio doit se réinventer, et notamment sur les plateformes, il faut vraiment penser à tout l'aspect qui est fonctionnel. Mais il y a aussi c'est très important de se rappeler que la radio est avant tout un média de broadcast. Alors BBC Radio 6 fait quand même appel par exemple aux médias sociaux, mais seulement à des périodes particulières où les auditeurs peuvent suggérer la musique qu'ils souhaitent écouter, mais vraiment sur des temps précis. Mais le broadcast et la diffusion donc en broadcast est un point fondamental aussi dans son aspect de partager quelque chose avec une audience, et aussi de pouvoir adapter la programmation à ce qui se passe autour. Par exemple, au moment de la mort de David Bowie, c'était important que des animateurs puissent programmer quelque chose qu'un algorithme ne peut pas faire. Thank you, Paul. I propose that we ask the audience if they have a few questions, if you are fine with it. So, on va prendre quelques questions. On peut les prendre en français ou en anglais. Je serai ravi de pouvoir traduire. On a une question de la dame devant. Si on peut essayer de faire court sur les questions, je crois qu'on va être poussé à la porte après. Je préfère être honnête.
Hello. You heard? Yes? Okay. I have a question about the programmation of BBC 6. I'm sorry, my English is not very, very good, but I try in English. You say that 95% of programmation is unique, never heard before. How you choose the music? Is by the industry of music, genre label, or how to say in French, maison de disque, in English, house disc? Sorry? Recording?
So how do you choose? You say that you have 95% of music that is not played by other radios. How do you choose the music? Do you contact the labels, the music industry? Do you receive CDs? How does it work?
Or by curiosity, on the bar, on internet, I don't know.
Bar, internet?
All of that. So there's an awful lot of music that comes into a radio station like Six Music. Look at it this way. If you are record labels and your speciality isn't mainstream music, it's likely that there are a lot of record labels that need the sustenance of a radio station that will consider their music. And this is one of the unique roles that Six Music plays, because it doesn't just play the mainstream, the hits. It does offer an opportunity for a wider, more eclectic music community to utilize it. Also, it's a different route to the airwaves because it often comes through our presenters, but also our music teams they understand what kind of music obviously Six Music is meant to play, and they're really, really curious about it. They know what's going on in the world of music and they know where it's come from. So I would say that much of the music comes to us. Tragically, we can't play all of it, but we're a very broad filter. And because we don't commit to repeat music a lot, it just means that we can play more unique songs. So if you listen to a guy like Mark Riley, 7 till 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursdays, you'll find him exploiting a sound that is just not found anywhere else on the radio. You listen to a guy like Giles Peterson, he's had a long connection with certain music genres. And there isn't really anywhere else. In the broadcast frame, by the way, there are other places, but in the broadcast media, there aren't really other places which can commit to this in to such an extent as Six Music. Taking Giles Peterson, he used to be on a radio station, but in the night. At Six Music, our audience are quite accepting of Giles Peterson and his very eclectic music offer being on a Saturday afternoon.
Thank you. One very last question, because we have to finish. So very short answer.
How do you balance the different styles?
How do you balance the different styles of music that you play on your station?
And is it very important for you to balance all of this?
It is important. I think it's important to understand that people's curiosity may be strong but isn't boundless. And so I think we have clearly defined areas where some kinds of music will get played. So we have a show called the Freak Zone, and that will take us to probably our outer edge in terms of what music we do. And we have a show called the Funk and Soul Show, and that will do what it says on the label there. So one of the ways that we balance the music that's played is by scheduling specific programs around it. We keep an eye, we can keep a record of what's gone, and we constantly talk about that, and we specifically in our daytime, we measure very carefully the kind of genres and the times where music comes from, because we have an agreement, a service license, which says that we will do those things. So what would I say? I would say we balance it by our music team researching it and understanding how the patterns are going. Then we will talk to presenters about the music offering that they have in their program, but we won't really get any, we won't lean in any further than that, really.
Thank you very much, Paul. Unfortunately, we cannot take any further questions, but obviously Paul will be, I'm sure, very happy to answer a few more questions, so feel free to talk to him. I'm gonna let Philippe and Frédéric for next. I would like, please, could you please applaud Paul? He has made the journey just for you today from London. Thank you very much, Paul.
Live on the world's top .radio domain name, www.european-show.radio.